Okay, it's time now for a panel which asks and hopefully answers the question, what do we know about deep tech AI and how far can it take us? Our panelists are Cristobal Alonso, CEO of startup Wise Guys Portugal, a B2B accelerator in Europe, which has invested in over 300 early stage SaaS, sustainable cybersecurity and fintech B2B startups. Thomas Debass is acting special representative for global partnerships at the US State Department. Thomas manages the department's private sector engagement efforts and provides thought leadership on partnerships related to economic growth, global finance, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And this session will be moderated by Natalia, Sycheva, managing partner of IntegraSeven, an enterprise that helps large and legacy organizations improve their business models and run their businesses more efficiently. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And very good afternoon, everyone. Last day of North Star. And we've got amazing speakers to dive into the topic of AI application and what it takes to build a successful AI deep tech startup and a company. Well, Thomas, because you're sitting closer to me, I'll start with you if you don't mind. There is a lot of polemic around what makes a deep tech startup more successful, entrepreneurial spirit of the founders or actually research that goes into the business model. In your view, what matters the most?
Great question. My comment, I think you and I were just discussing outside, is this question of what is deep tech and all that, right? Back in the days, AI itself used to be deep tech, right? The internet itself was deep tech. So I think the key thing in terms of the nexus between deep tech and I would say AI is the issue of convergence. I think the word of the day, frankly, if you're going to talk about this, is the convergence of these different technologies that is allowing, the barrier to entry for startups to play in this deep tech space has grown tremendously. And I think that's really is where the action is right now on what's considered deep tech. And it used to be just an R&D exercise. Now because of the democratization of these technologies, you now have startups any part of the world who might not have deep pockets getting to deep tech. So that's where at least I'm witnessing, and I'm sure my colleague here would have.
So thank you, Thomas. So as a result of this blended approach to building the companies, we get these amazing AI applications. And still there is a lot of confusion around what is considered deep tech, what is not deep tech. Cristobal, you travel around the world, you see different ideas, applications. Some examples that inspired you.
Yeah. Woo. Okay. So what is deep tech? So just to give you very quickly. VCs normally are taking the risk of go-to-market. So can you sell this product? When we're looking at deep tech, the first risk is, will this ever work? So we're going to put all this money in all this R&D, and maybe it works. Then it works, can we sell it? So I think that's the big difference between deep tech, okay? Everybody knows AlphaFold 3. They just got the Nobel Prize, right? So the three guys who actually were doing AlphaFold 3, I think it's chemistry, in molecular, right? So that's your first thing there. Giving a couple of examples of Europe, just not to be the classic one. We have a company called Brain LM, basically looking at mental health, predicting basically from all your mental neuroscience, who is going to get sick. So I think the diagnostics could be changed dramatically. And one more example, right now, we have Silo AI. It was probably one of the best R&D AI labs in Europe. It just got acquired by AMD in Finland, also breaking the idea that also in Europe can be. Just to ask of Thomas, we said democratize. It can be democratized, but just remember one thing. OpenAI is spending $700,000 a day just on electricity for running the models. So it's democratized or not. So you are not going to be playing on the infrastructure layer. That's for the big boys. Has billions to invest on this one. We're going to be playing on the application layer. So how we are going to put this in front of consumers, in front of researchers to be used, right? Even if it's deep tech AI.
Thank you. So there is what I sense, there is a long path to profitability and a lot of uncertainties around the deep tech applications and ideas to bring it to the market. So which brings us to how to make it work because most likely it will require some partnerships and ecosystem approach. Thomas, this is your specialization.
Yes, so I'm so glad you mentioned about the infrastructure layer and all those things are for the big dogs, if you call it. One of the big dogs are governments, right? The infrastructure that is needed, if you're even in the internet, came out of DARPA. I mean, the defense side on the US side. Now, Department of Energy, the National Science Foundations. So all these public institutions are putting billions of dollars, obviously, they're betting, obviously, is where the future is going. We betted quite well in the internet age, and the internet is now what's supposed to be. So I fully agree that the necessity on the deep tech side is going to be public institutions, governments, and I'm not just talking about the US side, but around the world, including in the UAE, are betting significant amount of resources to make sure that the infrastructure needed, like you're talking about. I just saw the news a couple of days ago, and I agree with you, in some cases governments might not even be the ones. Google is now investing in nuclear power, right? I mean, you saw Microsoft is doing the same. So these big tech companies now have both the market cap and the resources, and also the incentive for the future to do so. And public institutions like ours do acknowledge the role that they play, but we also want to make sure that the output that comes out of it has a public good. Because at the end of the day, whatever you want to call it, deep tech or whatever, if it's not good for humans, it isn't really good for anybody. So we want to make sure that the soul of these technologies that are coming out are still intact to humanity's needs. Whether it's, I've seen amazing technologies on the climate side, and I've been doing a lot of climate work. We've seen it on healthcare. I mean, the vaccine for COVID came out of how AI was able to empower these technologies to kind of produce these type of matchups of medication. So I'm saying the use cases is what drives public institutions to invest in kind of deep tech.
Yes,
Just to complement
Cristobal.
Thomas, the biggest risks are the biggest opportunities, right? So it's not just Google, Microsoft. The government has committed 65 billion just to develop nuclear energy in the last year, because we are not going to be able to run data centers in normal electricity without polluting. And the cleanest energy is actually nuclear. So it actually might solve some of the problems about green also. So again, there is a risk of the perception of nuclear, but it might be the way forward and the leap forward in electricity production, for example.
Thank you both. I want to remind the audience that we will have the time for one question from the audience before we go back to the last question to the panel. So think about if you want to ask the question and give the sign, because we have ushers to give you the mic. So, but my last question, and you both touched very important aspect of funding, the liquid gold that's required for the idea to become a business. So the combination, I hear the combination of the grant opportunities, but also VCs. So your take on what the entrepreneurs here in the audience who want to build a deep tech company, should they chase the grants, or there are VCs available, what the trends are?
I think it's a combination. 20% of the VC funding last year was actually deep tech. I think it's the biggest percentage of investment. And even Europe, that was lagging way behind the US, for example, we think we invested 4 billion. I think what it will happen is a big change for early stage VCs. We need to partner with universities, which we've never done. Universities in Europe are going to start putting VC funds out there, which was very common in the US, UK, but in Europe is going to do it. So I think it's going to be but you need 1 million, 2 million to keep going, right? So it's a combination of grant money, and most governments, if you come with VC money, they will complement it with grants, they will complement it with money. So I think it's that combination of public resources, of VCs who can do the due diligence, and partnering up with universities and researchers to make the researchers entrepreneurs, which is, by the way, one of the most difficult things in the world. But we need that combo in deep tech. We need the researchers to become entrepreneurs, combine private and public funding to get the ideas to the next level.
Thank you, Cristobal. Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're referring to is commercializations of R&D. And there is now significant even pressure that universities are getting, that if you're going to get these public funding, it shouldn't just be for academic reasons, which is important for knowledge generation, but how do you make sure that you're turning these R&Ds into what-if statements, right? At the end of the day, governments are there to ask the what-if questions. What if you take these technologies, apply to this set of problems that we face around the world, and what comes out of it has traction in the marketplace, so then funds like yours can come and make them commercially viable, right? But that layer, there's almost like who's going to be the first risk taker, right? This is where public institutions, there was a concept called additionality when I used to work at a US-backed DFI, Development Finance Corporation, where we use this word additionality, meaning we can only be in that market if it wasn't for the government, will that move forward? If the answer is yes, it would move forward, then public institutions should take a backstage, let the private sector do that. Public institutions should be there to correct the market failure, not create one, not to compete with the private sector. So we're seeing a lot of that now in the R&D because of the promise of what OpenAI did and all these AI technologies that are coming up. There is now the private sector has much more increased appetite to take a much more leap of kind of risk as it used to be reserved for public institutions. And we're happy that the governments are not always should be there to do that. Now you have a lot more players coming in and so to speak, subsidizing the future, so to speak.
Perfect. Thank you very much. A question from the audience. Does the audience have a question? All right. So I think my last probably comment or semi-question would be we are in Dubai, in the Middle East. And for the reasons because there is this public-private partnership is going. There is a lot of ideas, entrepreneurs are coming to the market. What made this market important for you? What has brought you here and what's your view on the Middle East? In 1 minute.
We were talking before, let me give you an example in 1 minute. Construction. Some of the newest materials in construction from a sustainable point of view, from different materials, is going to come from the region. Why? Because you have some of the biggest real estate players who are willing to invest in new ideas, who are willing to take 10 years projects, and governments who are willing to put also a bet on that one, right? So I think this togetherness of enterprise with innovation, public, and talent, I think makes this region in very particular verticals. And I think the government is willing to take way more long-term risk than some other governments. And I think that makes the region very attractive in that sense.
Thank you, Cristobal.
Yeah, for me, it's this entire platform is a public-private partnership. This is like the government of Dubai collaborating with the private sector, hosting the world to come and do that. The other thing I'm always fascinated about Dubai, obviously, is its obsession with the future. I mean, this is a place where the Museum of the Future exists. Like, that's really not just an awesome symbolic concept, but essentially is challenging us to think, to be obsessed about what's to come. And when you do that, when you talk about deep tech is supposed to be some distant future, and a platform like this, like GITEX, now going global, and I had the opportunity to go to Morocco this year, and seeing, inclusion, meaning let's go to every corner of the world, because the future does not belong to Dubai or America or Europe, it belongs to everyone. And seeing that level of excitement and seeing a truly global platform is what drives me, why I come here every year, to kind of be a witness to this unveiling of a future.
And obviously, thank you both for being part of this panel and being part of this show. And I'm sure there will be audience who would love to reach you out and have a chat with you after the session. Thank you very much once again. And thank you, the audience. Let's give a big round of applause to our speakers.